Welcome to The Holistic Nurse with your host, Peggy Smith. Peggy will introduce and educate her viewers about the differences between alternative, holistic, and complementary medical therapies. Her goal is to empower the lay medical consumer to learn how to advocate for themselves. So now, please welcome the host of The Holistic Nurse, Peggy Smith.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. Today, we're going to be answering a few key questions. Can your personality influence your health? If you can understand yourself better, will that help reduce your stress? And can astrology or human design affect your health for the good or the worse? Today, we're going to explore the possibilities as I welcome my guest, Scarlett DeBontin. She's, I'll let her tell you who she is. Welcome, Scarlett.
Hi,
How are you?
Peggy. Hi,
Hi,
Peggy. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really
well,
excited.
it's a pleasure. Can you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
So, I'm Scarlett DeBontin. I am a human design practitioner, astrologer, ask and receive practitioner, and an animal intuitive, and the creator of K-drama astrology, which is a fusion of Korean dramas and astrology. My main goal in life and my focus in general is the emotional and mental well-being of others and really helping or hoping to help everyone reconnect to their joy and their sense of joy of life and just that they can really feel at peace with who they are.
Well, today, as we're discussing astrology and human design, is there actually a discipline in schools that talk about? I haven't heard of human design, or is that a new name for something that we've been striving for years? Are we reinventing ourselves with your talents, or what exactly is how do we get there?
Well, my standpoint is really about reigniting the inner knowledge of what every individual already knows intrinsically within themselves. Sometimes we just need a little bit help to get there, depending on life circumstances, what's going on in our lives. It's easy to get stuck. In terms of human design, it's a system created by Hu over 30 years ago, and it's comprised of the Chinese I Ching, quantum physics, astrology, the Judaic Kabbalah, um, and I mentioned astrology. I'm missing one. Chinese I Ching, Judaic Kabbalah, quantum physics. Forgive me. I'm missing
That's
one. It'll
okay.
come back to me.
It'll pop
But
up,
in
I'm
any
sure, in the
case,
next few minutes.
it'll come back to me. It's the first time that that's ever happened, but it could just be the day. In any case, these different modalities were put into one format to create a chart that really helps one understand their personality, how they interact with the world, their decision-making process, and things like that. Um, how it can be used really, it's like neither astrology nor, and some people may get upset at me for saying this because of different beliefs. However, neither human design nor astrology claim to necessarily heal you. It's really a concise system that reflects back to the individual who either learns to interpret their chart themselves or sits with a practitioner to really understand the inner mechanisms of why they're feeling the way they're feeling, why they say and do the things that they do. And that's really, I mean, the core of self-awareness. Different practitioners come from different branches, and that's where a lot of the confusion tends to lie. For people, it's like, oh, well, one astrologer said this about me, and the other astrologer or the
Mhm.
other human design specialist told me I'm one energy type. And actually, now there's Vedic astrology that's used within the system. So you add different branches of astrology, and your entire chart will change. And that tends to frighten people sometimes. They think, well, I've been living my life under a certain understanding, and now somebody is telling me it's completely different. What am I meant to believe? And at the end of the day, believe is the important word here because you have to go with what resonates, what rings true for you. Um, but I digress. And in terms of
Well, that's okay.
astrology, I mean,
comes to mind as you're describing this, like in the on a college campus, for instance, you don't know what major to pick. You can go to an educational resource department who will test you and come out with, these are what your strong points are.
Mm,
You're looking towards mathematics, even though you like to draw, and it gives you just more information so you can make the decisions, and hopefully save time, because time is one of the most precious commodities we have, and
exactly.
you can't get it back once we lose it.
Mm.
So how long have
I
you been
mean,
doing this? What got you interested in this originally?
well, there isn't really a moment where I said, "Oh, I'm going to do this." Everything was just I when people say, "Oh, it was right timing and divine timing," I can't escape the fact that that's the truth. There were a number of things going on in my life. I mean, with human design, I was first introduced to it back in 2009, and actually through my mother. She had sent me a link. She said, "I signed you up for this. It might be of interest to you, and have a listen." And I was in Salzburg, Austria at the time, and I was one of the individuals on the call that was able to ask a question. Interestingly enough, I'll jump ahead 6 years later. Um, I decided as okay, I've been learning about human design, I've been researching, I've been reading as much as I can, I've been trying to implement this information, which went hand in hand with my knowledge of astrology. So I thought, I'll learn more. And as I was working on my certification, I came across a class that happened to have this recording of when I was on in 2009 back in Austria. And those are
Yeah,
just those moments in life where you don't know where life is going to take you, but I took that as a sign that I was on the right path.
absolutely. We know life is very circular, even though we don't
Mm.
understand how certain things come back. So tell us about how astrology works. Some people have mixed ideas about that. They confuse it with the signs of the zodiac, and that's what the most common people think of. I think when they're thinking about astrology. What information do you acquire in an evaluation?
Well, it really depends, and I always advise people to inform themselves about the different branches of astrology first and foremost. I advise them to ask themselves questions about whether they believe in celestial determinism, meaning do they believe that the movement of the location of the planets and the movement of the planets directly influences what's going to happen in their lives or how they're going to act? And then I also ask people to reflect upon their it's part of futurism, the fear of the unknown. So are you going to an astrologer, or are you learning about astrology because of a fear of not knowing what's going to happen in your life, or are you going to someone to have somebody help you interpret what you already internally know? And I learned from my mentor, and I believe this wholeheartedly. He told us that everyone's an astrologer, but few actually are, meaning that every individual, you're your own astrologer. When you're born, you have the archetypes and themes by the specific horoscope, so the snapshot of the celestial sky, and you're looking at archetypes and themes, right? So just because, and I've talked about this a lot recently, Mercury is retrograde. Yes, you can lose your keys. Yes, emails might not make it through, or text messages. Yes, you may want to reconsider some travel plans or get stuck in traffic. Does it mean these things are going to happen? From my perspective, no, not necessarily. They could happen, but they could happen whether Mercury is retrograde or not. And just real quick for those who don't know, when a planet goes in retrograde, it looks, when you're looking at it from the sky, that as if a planet is going backwards, when what's actually happening, it's just slowing down. And it's a sign. So when any planet is retrograde, is to look. So if you type it in Google, you look up at a chart, or you tend to come across something from an astrologer who's saying this planet is retrograde. I always look at that as a sign and tell people, it's like, okay, let's look at the archetypes and themes, not what's going on outside of you, but what's going on within.
Right.
Most important. Sorry, I have
No,
one
that's
more
okay.
point it's,
No, keep going.
that I really stand by is the saying, "Know thyself." And that's what astrology, human design, and I remember now it was the Hindu chakra system that I left
Okay.
out from human design. And so all of these different modalities have languaging around what is going on within ourselves and having markers for ourselves. Now, every body is different. So, when we talk about sun signs and the zodiac, not one is going to interact or exchange in the exact same way that many people are used to seeing on the internet in newspaper articles and magazines.
So one thing that came to mind as you're saying that, as a healthcare provider in traditional medicine, any nurse, any police officer, they'll tell you that on the nights of the full moon, the world does seem to be going crazy. Many times when my dogs won't settle and I'm like, what the heck's going on? I'll look out the window. Oh, of course, it's a full moon, and
It's a
working
phenomenon.
more babies are often born on full moons, and many people will pass on and on also a full moon, in that time
Mhm.
period. Uh, so there is some significance that has a lot of scientific backing and
Mm.
evidence that we are affected. Uh, but I guess the big question is: are we going to let these external factors guide us, or because for some people, oh, well, I've got an excuse now. I can, screw up because it's a full moon week or something. I, that's where I'm hoping you come in, is you're helping people design.
Well, definitely. I mean, it's the recognition of, I mean, first of all, there are people, it's the difference between am I going to live my life from a reactory place or am I going to live life from an intentional place? And it's not necessarily, oh, you have to do one or the other. And that's what a lot of people strive for. Where I come in is showing people where it's like there may be times where you will be reactory, but when you know the archetypes and themes of your own specific horoscope and the progression, whatever branch of astrology you choose, it's good to know this. As I said, some people really want the predictive astrology that's going to say this is how I'm going to react in every situation. I'm fine with that, and, people will choose what they, want to express and how they want to live. However, I would say under these circumstances, like a full moon, the very best thing to do is just recognize, okay, what does the moon represent? You have how you nurture, how you're nurtured, how you support, how you're supported, your emotions, deep-seated emotions, surface level emotions. And it's about self-awareness at the end of the day, your imagination, your dreams. What is it that you're striving towards? And if you're coming from a perspective where life isn't working out for me, my body is against me, so the relationship with our body is both the moon and another planet, and putting this out there just so people can look up for themselves, their topics that I could discuss into the endless forever. But with Saturn and the body, so if your relationship with your body is already at a point where my body's working against me and there's nothing I can do, well, that's where I would come in and we'd look, all right, what funnel of consciousness, zodiac sign, is the moon currently in? What is your moon? If we know. A lot of times there are people who say, I don't have my birth time. And there are ways of creating a horoscope based off of an extensive discussion first and foremost, where then it's an astrologer's job. There are, I would say, many astrologers out there who focus their time and energy on this so that they can regenerate a chart for the individual. That's always one way of going. I tend to say if we don't have your birth time, we'll just look at the moment right now of what's going on right now. I putting that out there to people just so that they can feel, oh, I don't have my birth time, so I guess I'll never be able to use astrology or human design or any modality in that sense. And I'm kind of stuck and helpless, which if I'm having a conversation with somebody, that's already a marker. So I'm already looking, where's helplessness? Neptune, roughly when were they born? Those are all things that I will then put together and we'll go with the birthday and see if the chart reflects what the individual is saying.
Okay, well,
Now,
I
real
think that's
quick,
a good
sorry,
place to
real
put.
real
We're going
quick,
to take.
real quick. I
Okay.
just wanted to say it's like there will be people. There's always, I mean, there's always one who's going to say things from a perspective of you can't encapsulate who I am. And that's okay too. But when they say certain things, you look for nuances. That's the strength of, I would say, of a really good astrologer, somebody who's able to listen and to hear the words and then be able to connect them to certain planets.
Okay, well, on that note, we will come back in just a few moments and pick up on this. It's been very enlightening so far.
Yeah.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Hi, welcome back to the Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and Scarlett. We're talking, she is an astrologist and human design practitioner, and how that relates to holistic health in general and just creating better lives for ourselves. Gloria, would you like to pick up, take off from here?
I'm very happy to continue. We were just discussing about how the moon and the full moon and how, what can an astrologer help someone understand about their emotions and during these times and things to think about. Um, and you could really do that with any planet in astrology, but I would like to switch over to human design and how that is helpful within human design, there are five energy types. Um, I'll just briefly say you have the manifester, who is an initiator. You have the projector, who the manifestors make up roughly 8% of the world population. And so the generator types and the manifesting generator types, they're the builders, creators. They make up roughly 70% of the world population. You have the projector energy type, that's roughly 20% of the world population. They're here to guide, they're here to share different perspectives. And then you have the reflector. And one could say that they're the observers of the world population, roughly 2%. And the thing is, each energy type, they have so 9 energy systems that correlate to the Hindu chakra system. So the two that are split was the emotional solar plexus, which is split into a spleen center, so more intuition and the emotions. So that's self-explanatory. And then the heart center is both heart and so ego, will, drive, and identity. And with all of those centers, each energy archetype from human design will highlight whether somebody is defined where there's a I like to say that there's a dominant focus. This is where the individual knows, specifically sees that they know this about themselves. I am a driven person, or I am ambitious, or I'm a very emotional person. Those are just a few things that's important to know. And then there are the open centers. It's really where, I don't want to say where people feel blindsided, but it's where they exchange, where according to human design, where the energy flows between, you take up like a sponge the energy of whomever you're interacting with or wherever you are at a specific time. And that's very helpful when you look at a chart, because on the one hand, sure, everybody, mean, who does reflect and who does take self accountability. I mean, that's a very important part of emotional and mental well being. And the more that you can take responsibility and reflect, it's really one of the reasons why this system is so helpful. It's because you know you have it right in front of you. Now, each energy type as well, they have an authority, which is a decision-making process. And again, so this is a fusion of different modalities. And I like to remind people where, just because you may not necessarily think that this is you, think through it. If you don't think it's you, that's always a moment to say, well, what type of astrology, which branch did you use in order to create this chart? And if I say, well, I use Western astrology, and they say I would prefer to do Vedic, that's a sign for me, because I also wholeheartedly admit that I'm not familiar. I mean, I'm familiar with, but it's not my area of expertise. So I would know, oh, I will send this individual to a colleague that does Vedic astrology, that they can resonate with the information that they're given. Now, the next thing is, so with the authority and the decision making process, that's it gets a little bit complex and always depends on individual cases. Just, I mean, like, where it's an individual comes in and they present certain symptoms, it's not always going to be the same for everyone. You have to do a little bit of digging and research. Um, what Again, I don't want to say, like, I wouldn't claim that human design or astrology in and of itself is going to be the healing factor. Um, it's really, if the question, remind me if it's what you asked me, what you asked me, it's, is it, how does one know, how does one use the chart in order to implement healthy decisions, or was it more, what is it that's going on? Could you
Well,
refresh my memory?
I view the perspective that it's like a roadmap, and and I'm dyslexic and always never following the roadmap, but it's a guide. But I think there's free will is involved here. I see that aspect of it, which
Mhm.
we often shoot ourselves in the foot all the time, um, and it's complicated. But I think at a time when healthcare is difficult to access and you have to be more responsible and do what you can do for yourself, it's certainly
Mhm.
helpful. But most of us don't like to hear news, that burst the image that we have of ourselves, and it's often not who we really feel deep inside, who we are. Uh,
Mm. And that's a very fair point, where when you look at, you're presenting with some health symptoms, that there's a lot of fear that may arise. And lots of people is like, I don't know where this came from. And you go and you visit your doctor and you do the tests, and hopefully, I mean, the best result is always that that your doctor can explain to you what it is that's going on. Um, I always tend to say, where it's like, if the result is fear based already, it's important to see, to make sure. I mean, I'm stating the obvious, right? You want to trust your doctor, but if your doctor is going through a divorce, let's say, and not in a space where they're going to have the best bedside manner, or the bedside manner that they used to have, those are moments where it's like, I always say it's important to question, where you're like, maybe I do need a second opinion, not because I don't trust my doctor, but something inside is telling me maybe there's more to the story than what I'm being told. And that's what knowing your human design and astrology really helps you. It helps you make those decisions, and not just in a way where, I mean, sometimes it's even a matter of not getting a second opinion, and, it's like, that's not what I'm not advocating that everybody
Right.
just
No, I
full
understand.
trust, and
What
given how
comes
you
to
said,
mind, I
we look
guess,
at the
is the
medical.
spectrum of autoimmune conditions.
With autoimmune conditions, the thing, from an astrological perspective, it's really showing. I would look at the moon. I would look, so it's like our emotions. I'd look, and when I'm looking at the moon, I'm always looking at Mercury, our thoughts. So the emotional and mental is always connected to a certain extent. Sometimes some people are so completely cut off from their emotions and they say, I don't even know why. Like I am so completely stuck. Now, one could argue dis-ease is really the first marker that you're overstressed, overwhelmed, over frustrated, already to a point where that's where the cutoff may happen. And when you can recognize that, that's normally the point where doctors, or in the health community, we talk about stress management. And yes, you want to reduce screen time. Yes, you want to spend more time and connect with other people or individuals who have a positive outlook and who aren't having conversations with you, who are criticizing you and bringing you down and putting you. I don't want to say putting you, because I like I said, I do advocate for self responsibility. We are responsible for our emotions and how we choose to react. But also, as I said earlier, it's like, are we going to be reactory, or are we going to respond with intention? And the thing is, so Moon, Mercury, and then Saturn. So with those three archetypes, well, just in short, so with the Moon, we got the emotions. With Mercury, it's how we're communicating. And with Saturn, it's our timing. It could be also not just our timing, but it's the physical. So it's, what are the choices? What are we physically doing in specific moments? Now, these are conversations to have with your health professional for what
Mm.
we're supposed to be talking about. And the thing is, it's the way I understand the system now. It's, you go based off of, oh, well, let's look at your nutrition. How are you eating? What can you do in order to reduce your screen time? The general topics that people will then look into. With astrology, when you know it's like, okay, so some people will, their emotions are connected to conversations, connecting with other people. Some people's emotions so have their the space to breathe if they're solitary, if they take time to themselves. And that's where then you can specifically connect what the healthcare professional is saying along with what works well for you. Lots of people, and I've been one of them in my life, has been at a point where I presented with symptoms. I went to the doctor and I followed all of the protocols. And that's what with autoimmune disease, a lot of the times where, I mean, and this happens in any profession, right? Where it's like there's a nuance to what is actually going on with the individual. Everybody is literally, body is different, and every microbiome, like every person's microbiome, there's not one that's similar. And we know now, and we're learning more and more about how our gut biomes are, you could consider them our second brains, and those are fueled by emotions as well. The moon, in medical astrology, it's my understanding, and it's not my, I'm aware of it. I've learned it across the years, but it's not the focus of the astrology that I do. But the moon will affect our fluids. It will affect our digestion. So, yes, on the one hand, the argument could be, take time where you really do something where you focus on your joy. And the nuance then ends up becoming, if you're coming from a place of powerlessness, a place of defeat, a place of grief, the gap between the grief and joy is very large. So it's about finding those tiny little steps where you can say, how can I move from grief to maybe thoughts of revenge if necessary? You don't actually act upon the revenge, right? But how do I slowly but surely, how can I help this individual recognize they're in grief? And we know everybody has their own timing as well. Those are also things that pop up that are important for both the patient and the healthcare professional, in my opinion.
Okay, I think on that note, we'll take another break and come back to some of the practical things we can do to take advantage of this information.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, welcome back to this week's Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. We're discussing how the science of astrology and human design is another way of learning more about ourselves so that we can pick the tools that we've been discussing for months now, different wellness and alternative tools to handle the things that we can handle, to just manage our life, even if we're dealing with adversity and struggles. You've been talking a lot about and it very definitely is science-based, everything you've been talking about. What misconceptions do people have about this? If you could just real briefly talk on that.
So there are a lot of misconceptions, and I don't even want to call, those who, I call it, they're just very different beliefs, and it's through not being clear about the different branches of astrology, the different perspectives of how somebody is interpreting human design. So the misconceptions that come through is, I mean, the biggest one is not being tolerant of other people's different, like differing perspectives and differing opinions. So I'm not one to sit here and say this branch of astrology is superior to another branch of astrology. I tend to go off of my interpretations. I share my insights, and I give people the opportunity to give feedback in terms of whether or not it resonates with them. So I would say the biggest misconceptions really come from our own judgments and our own fears and our own experiences, where we were talking about self accountability, self responsibility. It's if there's something that resonates with you. And I do also have to admit, the sad thing is that no it seems like we're no longer living in a time where we're being taught how to stand up for ourselves. We're taught to defend ourselves, we're taught to cut people off real quick and block them off. But the biggest misconception is that I know what's best for somebody else. The mind process, the mentality of, because I believe in something so firmly, I'm right, so they don't believe in this, they must be wrong.
Well, I know growing up, and I'm not going to get into religious beliefs and everything, but many religions have had a negative view of this modality, this perspective, because they feel that their higher power, whomever they call it, he or
Mm,
she, is what should be our guiding uh, thing, and they even look negative at times in history against things like meditation. Yet
mm,
in their own religions, their customs are forms of meditation. They just didn't label it that and recognize that.
mm,
Um, and I don't, I believe certainly nothing. There's no one size fits all. We have to explore, and it's the goal here is probably just getting to know ourselves and
mm,
accepting ourselves.
mm,
So many of the energy modalities, holistic things, they work on getting you to know and accept yourself and even forgive yourself for even the struggles that you're having. It doesn't mean that it's your fault you have these struggles, but
mm,
it shows your mind that you have control over how you're reacting to these things. And yes, there's been a higher incidence, at least in this country, of road rage and things like that. People, the human factor seems to be missing a lot of times, and
mm,
it's because we're all on the computers too much, and uh,
mm.
AI takes the human part out. There's too many cartoons in those models, but um, we don't have a lot of time left. We have before we finish this show. If somebody was brand new, what advice would you tell them to uh, feel safe about exploring this without conflicting with their, you know, the- I mean,
With
we can't control it.
with their current beliefs. Um, Whenever there's a religious component and someone that's brand new, I like to advise in saying, what if this modality is a gift from your higher power, right? When we look at history, there are lots of things that we are told this is good, this is bad. And through evolution and what we experience, I mean, when we look back at times, we realize, oh, I used to think ABC, XYZ was positive or negative, but I've learned. And that's, I mean, the beauty of the human life experience is that we're learning and growing and experiencing. So to someone new, I would say it's like, well, instead of seeing this as something outside of your higher power, see it as a gift from them, he or she or
Right.
whomever, in that sense. Because when you can view it as not something that dictates what's gonna or like what is happening or going to happen or why something has happened in your life, you really look at it more from a perspective of, oh, what are the archetypes? What are the themes? How does this apply to me? How am I a little bit different than necessarily someone than somebody else? And when I
I think
interact with this
that's really
person.
important. If you find that you're repeating some unhealthy habits or situations keep coming back in your life, uh,
Mm,
uh, because I think it was what John Kabat-Zinn, wherever you go, there you are. And so
mm,
we can't run away from who we are. Um, and,
exactly.
it's, you have to be willing to love yourself just like you would love your child. You might not agree with their behavior if it's not appropriate and they get in some, bigger, serious trouble, but you're still going to love your child, you know,
Exactly.
and you'll accept the fact that you did the best you could as a parent and had no control,
Mhm.
Um, but I think we have to learn how to love ourselves more and just accept ourselves.
Definitely.
And that encourages us to look for ways to, not shortcuts, but streamline some lessons in life. You just have to learn the hard way. um,
Right.
but
Well,
when
if I may real quick then, so it's like within astrology, as I said, I'd look at Saturn, Moon, Mercury, and other planets and archetypes and themes. But the beautiful thing is each theme, it's like being on an emotional sliding scale. On the lower frequency of Saturn, you have physical death, you have timing and aging, and on the higher end of the scale, you have protection and self-love and recognizing the self. And in human design, I mean, you look at the authority types that people have. So whether you're meant to initiate and inform, whether you're supposed to, like I didn't mean that. I retract that. I mean, when you think for yourself, I choose to create, I choose to guide. And those are just parameters, right? Everybody initiates, guides, builds, observes. It's just recognizing what feels best. This is my chart. What can I learn from it? It's, I'd say, a tool, a languaging that you're already expressing. I know that my mentor, Karen Curry Parker, whom I learned human design from, I studied under her, was we all speak our chart. And many astrology mentors and teachers will say the same thing. We're already expressing what a practitioner is sharing with you. It's just about finding those little nuggets of where am I willing to change? And when I change internally, when I see what's going on outside of me and I don't like it, I can look at a chart, be it human design, be it astrology, any other modality. And that's where the self responsibility and self accountability comes to say, I'm willing to choose. And especially when we're experiencing disease, so dis-ease, those are moments where the very best thing that we can do, especially in correlation with our healthcare professionals, is to find where can I find the rest needed in order to recalibrate everything that's already going on within.
Okay, and I also a thought just popped and almost escaped, I think, right there. Um, give me a sec. Why don't you talk for a minute while I think of that thought that just escaped?
Okay, no, of course. I mean, I didn't mention it before, but I mean, well, I could talk about from the perspective from medical astrology. They do tend to use the zodiac signs as governing energies over specific parts of the body, and that's what if somebody were to go to a medical astrologer that they would look at. They said, okay, what have you discussed with your healthcare professional, with your doctor? What are the symptoms? And we'll look, they will then say it's okay if we're dealing with, let's say, an autoimmune, then they'll look at, I mean, I'm trying to think where if we're looking at
And
stomach.
what you're describing is not unlike the chakra systems that most of the
Mm,
energy modalities, follow through. And the thought that I think I had that ran away, functional medicine, um,
mm,
many times they do like micro blood tests to see, if you have a propensity for heart disease later, or, things like that, so that you can take that information and change your current lifestyle.
mm.
And you have control. Just because you have the blood test that says this is going to happen, it doesn't mean that it
That it
has to happen,
will.
you know um, a lot of eye issues, actually, as I'm learning. Macular degeneration, there's a lot you can do with diet and supplements and things like that.
Mm.
It is a genetic condition, but you don't have to experience the lowest spectrum, the worst part of that. You have a lot of control to uh, live every moment as full as you can, the things that you can control.
Exactly. And I do want to preface, I mean, I'm not preface, but I want to say and remind people because sometimes listening to a talk like ours and what I'm saying, it's like, oh, all of the responsibility is on my shoulders. Well, I also have the responsibility of my family and my coworker or my employees, my boss, whatever's going on. And now you're telling me that I created my illness, and that can create a completely different whirlwind where it's, in my opinion, never best. It's not about playing the blame game. It's about saying, all right, so you have what you have. Now we're going to use not only the physical components, but the emotional, mental components for you not to blame yourself, but just to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I want to make a change. What is the biggest indicator whether the change is necessary? We don't feel good. We don't see well. We're afraid of the future. Well, that's, where anything that's predictive in life comes in. I want to know my future. I want to know that things are going to be okay. And it can often seem daunting and disappointing when you have someone say, it's like, well, it's not up to me to change your life. I'm here to remind you that you already can. If you have a question, if you have a problem, the answer is exactly in the same place where the problem arose.
Right. And victimhood is something that is, sold widely in our society these days. We're going to take our final break and then, close the show with some good advice to look forward to going forward. Thank you.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Okay, welcome back to our final segment of The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and Scarlett talking to us about human design and how that modality can actually empower us to, take stronger steps. We have about 6 minutes left. What closing messages would you like to share with people? And also be sure to let them know how to reach you.
Will do. Thank you, Peggy. I think the most important takeaway really isn't whether, you believe in astrology or human design. It's a matter of being able to put together the pieces of what works and resonates for you. Ideally, from my perspective, is, you bring together the physical components, so talking with your doctors, taking self-reflection not only on what you've learned, but from through a diagnosis, whether it's going better or going worse. I would say we're in whatever direction it is, it's that you take the time to really self-reflect on that process. And then also ideally is then being able to, if one wants, sometimes the nuance isn't important for people, right? Sometimes the idea is just, I'm better, that's it, which is fine. And many people do that. And I would say where it's like, okay, what have I learned from this scenario? That's why I would go for the nuance. That's why I would look at the archetypes and themes from astrology that are also present in human design, where I would look and then say, it's like, do you care, but not care? Sounds a little bit judgy. And I don't mean to say that. It's bring the threads together, the physical component, the individual component, and then also the archetypes and themes that are basically the tools for your paintbrush. You have the paintbrush in your hand, you get to dip it in all the different paints and draw on the canvas that is your life. And that's
And
what
I
I
would
would
like to
recommend
also
for people
interject
to see.
here, living a life of gratitude philosophies, based on gratitude philosophies, is a good hack to make you strong enough to get through some of the more difficult spots. How would people reach you if they would like more information or like your services?
The very best way to reach me is through my website. It's scarlettdebontin.com. And they'll see I have a number of modalities from different perspectives of whatever resonates with them. They can read about the offerings that I have. And I always say, it's like, if there's something that they're looking for that they don't necessarily find being offered, please always ask. I'm always happy to tailor whatever specific needs for those who come to me.
And somebody, I mean, it's a pretty complicated world that we live in,
Mhm.
on all areas of the planet these days. Um, so many of us have have absorbed the concept of we're all victims of, all these higher things out of our control. Uh, I think it's important that we just focus on what we can change ourselves and what's happening in our present moment, in our present life. And even if it helps you just make your little piece of the corner of your world uh, a little less chaotic. And sometimes it at least changes your perspective and how you look at everybody else. Um,
Mm. If I may, I would put
yeah.
that so victimhood is one of the so it's like on the sliding scale of a Neptunian theme. It's at the very bottom. So blame, victimhood, blame, escapism, trying to find something where you're avoiding yourself, you're avoiding your reality. And I'd say, the best thing to know is that, on the higher frequency of that Neptunian energy. So if you're down at victimhood, you want to find ways that you can go up where you don't have to get stuck in victimhood, you don't have to get stuck in escapism, you don't have to get stuck in blame. You can take little steps to what you will actually want to do. You want to transcend, and you want to tune into your imagination. And that's I mean, maybe for another discussion, but when you step into your imagination, there are lots of people who start saying, oh well, you're delusional. And it's, well, if you can envision that beautiful life that you had either prior, before an illness appeared, you can envision it moving forward as well. And that's where, like, to your point, I mean, gratitude and appreciation. I mean, there are people you might wake up where you're like, I don't want to get out of bed. And the first thing that you can think is, I opened my eyes. I'm grateful I opened my eyes. I'm grateful I can see. And you just go through your body. If you can, of course, right? Where it's like the smallest detail is, my body's taking care of my breath. I'm breathing. My heart is beating. You start there, start really small. I mean, that's, I think, my biggest suggestion as well, no matter what physical symptoms one is moving through. If you can start so small and just do that a minute, 2, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Some people are like, oh, I have to do it for 5 minutes. No, maybe even 30 seconds. Just beginning, just taking that baby step. And then
I
that's
think
where everything
when
goes
we're
from there.
talking about baby steps too, it's important to understand that emotional struggles are not doesn't mean you're crazy or mentally ill, use common words.
Exactly.
It means you're human. And,
Exactly.
so if you can accept that basic, fact of life that we have no control over, we are human, um, and start that as a starting point, then it's easier to accept the feelings and emotions
Mm,
and be more open-minded about what you need. And like I was telling you on last night we were talking, my mother always said, if you have to ask the question, you know the answer. And I think for most of us, the answer, ask inside, ask your mind and your body, what do I need to feel better right now? And it
mm.
really works, corny as it
It re
sounds.
It really truly does, and it's also, people have different levels of discipline, and that's the thing where there are so many different modalities, and if we're looking at health and nutrition, which diet works for some person, and when you start something and, you're not seeing the results that you want, it's recognizing, "Is this even right for my body?" If you get the okay from the doctor, try it. Right? And lots of people, they'll give up maybe at one point or another, and that's okay too, because that's also a part of their journey where they recognize, okay, I gave up. Can I look back and say, at least I tried it. Maybe I'll try it again. Maybe I'll try something else, right? Like, that's the beauty. We get to choose.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this week. I think we'll definitely have another show and expand on these ideas in the future, near future. You have a great week, and thank you for contributing to the Holistic Nurse this week. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Peggy. This has been such a pleasure. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This has been The Holistic Nurse with host Peggy Smith. Tune in each week where you're encouraged to send in questions and receive private responses and suggestions if appropriate. Here's Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern.